Hey everybody out there in Internet's land, it's me, Francis7, back with another one of these little extra things for my GMAX boot camp class. Anyhow, in this particular extra edition, we're going to learn how to make a sign. We're going to use Boolean logic in order to remove parts of that sign. We're going to review once again welding of verts together. Um, We'll talk a little bit about textures and making them glow in the dark, although not very much, as that you can do that through Previewer now, so that's not an essential. And we'll talk about rotating objects in the three-dimensional space, and we'll talk about how, last but not least, how to make sure your thing isn't gigantically huge or way too tiny, how you can compare it to the size of an avatar. Um, and off we go. All right, so to make our sign, we're going to need to have a texture for our sign. And the first thing we're going to do is take this image in Photoshop, and I'm going to flatten the image, and I'm going to resize the image. How the heck do I do that? I can't remember. Oh no. Image size. There we go. Okay, and let's see. Constrain proportions. No, I don't want to constrain proportions. What I want it to do is be like, oh, let's say we're going to make it a real high res sign. So we're going to make it 512 by 512 pixels. And let me zoom in on this so you can see this. So once again, this is probably one of the larger sizes that you can actually do and get away with. Once again, the resolution is also 72. Um, but basically, 512 by 512 is the largest texture that there currently allows at the time of this recording. You're probably much better off making an item that has a 256 by 256 texture, or maybe one that was 512 wide, in this case by 256 high, but in this case we want it to look as nice as possible. We have a fairly large sign, so say okay. And now we've got this sort of thing crunched down here. Looks pretty darn good. So what we're going to do is we'll save as, and I'm going to go ahead and make it. You probably want to use PNG when possible. It usually looks a little bit better than most JPEGs, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with PNG in this case. Go to the desktop. I have a new folder where I'm going to put this stuff in. I'm going to give it a name. It doesn't really have to be like a one-word name or something, but I usually tend to do that. And there we go. So we're all set, and we're done with this, and we can get back into GMAX now. For making our sign, I already have a couple wood textures. These were ones that they're provided us. Hopefully they'll do that again. It's real handy when you're trying to make objects that blend in with the Tiki environment to be able to actually use some of their textures. And there's certain ones which they're allowed you to use. I'm hoping they're going to allow us to use those again. And let's create a few things. Let's go ahead and actually let me stop. Alrighty, we're going to start off by creating a standard sort of box over here. So we've gone to basically it's the what do you call that thing? I don't know. It's the create little star arrow. And we're setting a box, and we're going to make first off from the top view. We're going to learn how to rotate some objects in this lesson too. So we're going to make a tiny little box, and it's going to be let's say the length is let's make 1 by 2 by 0.5. So something, the measurements could be something like this. And then we'll see how that looks. We're going to use the 4 arrow tool. We're going to go down here and make sure that we put it in the center of our world here. So it's in the center, 0. And we're going to use zoom extents here to basically zoom all the way out. This is not exactly what I thought it would look like at all. I completely messed this up, didn't I? Oh well, that's what you can fix things. That's the nice thing about it. So here's the thing. This particular object is way too uh, skinny. I was hoping to go the other way. I wasn't paying attention, I guess. So here's this, and we're going to make this little sign here. We're going to stretch this out a little bit. It's going to be the back of our sign. We're going to stretch this down here. This will be the front of our sign, and from the front view, it's way too tall. So basically now I've got sort of this large board. This is the board that's going to hold the sign up. I'm not going to distort it and make it sort of there looking like yet, but as long as I'm here, I might as well go ahead and get rid of right-click, convert to editable mesh, say the mantra with me, going to click on the bottom. It's not going to actually have a bottom polygon. I don't need to have that bottom polygon on the base of my sign because that's going to be the pole holding it up. Let's see. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my 4-arrow tool. I'm going to right click and convert to editable mesh again. I'm going to go to the little triangle, pull down UVW map, which is over here. Remember this one from previous lessons. You go to the little triangle, pull it down. All right. Oops. Okay, UVW map, and then I'm going to drag one of my textures. And I happen to have a little wood texture here, so I'll just drag it out here. Hopefully it's facing the right way. It looks like it is. That looks pretty darn good to me. Maybe if, maybe, you know, the UV map, it might look a little bit better. Those ropes look a little thick. So let's see, which dimension do I got to go? This way, I'm thinking. Yeah, I could have like 2 sets of ropes. That might look a lot better. Yeah, like this. There, that looks like a heck of a lot better. It's still, now that I'm looking at it, looks a little odd because it's just being stretched over the side. I might actually go for a box mapping. And let's see, let's try aligning it to X, try aligning it to Y. Okay, so what I did is I had to fool around with the alignment until I got the point where the boards are basically matching on each of the sides. And I used Y in this case, because we like you, and saying that looks pretty darn good. So I've got this thing looking the right way. Once again, it does play. It does. I used box mapping, by the way, which basically doesn't add that many verts to it. So okay, so I've got this. Now we need to create the top, and I'm just going to create another little box right here, and it's going to be a fairly large box. And this is going to be like the top of our sign, and I could, I suppose, move it so that it sticks up above the top, or I could have it down below so it's sort of like that. Thinking probably is going to look best about there. Maybe even make it a little larger. That's what. Do you remember this tool? This tool allows you to make things a little larger. So let's make it a little bit larger. That looks pretty cool. And then from the front, we don't want it to basically, you know, float above the sign, but we also don't want it to like stick below it. So basically we'll move this up way high. Let's say it sticks into the board a teeny bit. That looks pretty cool. Now this is eventually going to have its own frame around the outside, so we're going to need to do something about that in order to make it work. Let me use the little field of view angle there. So eventually it's going to need to have something else. All right, and that's where the next thing comes in. We're going to go ahead and right click and convert to editable mesh. And I'm going to hold my shift key down and drag up another copy of it. And this is where we're going to use this particular object right over here to subtract from the other object. It's called Boolean logic. It's real common in 3D modeling, very, very common. And basically I want to get this thing, so up here it's going to basically, the outside, this part is going to be the wooden frame, and we're going to subtract this other part from it to make the surface will be in this area. All right. So I've got this. In order to do this, the objects actually do have to intersect. So I'm going to have to move this thing down, and it's going to cut a hole. It's like a three-dimensional pair of scissors. So if I made it all the way through, I can make like a window using this technology. But in this case, I just want to go into the sign just a teeny little bit here. Might help if that was a different color. We learned how to make things colors earlier. All right, and then basically I'm going to right-click on the one that's going to stay and convert it to editable mesh, and I'm going to go up to that create tool that we just showed you guys a minute ago. It's the default tool, but instead of standard primitives, I'm going to pull that list down and select compound objects. And underneath compound objects, once again we're on the this little arrow menu over here. That's where we get this. And then compound objects from the pull down menu, and then what we want is indeed Boolean, which you may remember from your math classes as part of a sort of a Venn diagram. You know, it's either this or that, or you can join the two things together. Anyhow, so what we need to do is click on that, and then we click this little box over here, which is called Pick Operand B. You click that one, and then we need to click the one we're subtracting. So in this case, it's the green guy. I click that, and watch what happens. Boom. All right, let me go back down here so you can see what's actually happened. And here we have this thing. Basically, it's a sign. Now, texturing it's going to be a little tricky. It's got all these extra little bits of things left over. And I really like to keep the polygon count as low as I can. So what we're going to do now is we're going to weld some of these verts together that we've created. Because actually, if we look this in the wireframe, let me pull this up and show you this. I usually don't do this, but if we zoom all the way in, you can see that this has this corner. Well, each one of these little corners, uh, each one of these little corner pieces, that's a vert here, and this is a vert here. And if we weld them together, it will kind of stretch them and put them in the middle. So we'll have one vert, which will be about here, which will give us a much nicer looking sort of sign. Now, if you don't know how to reset this view, this happens a lot when I'm working. I get in some weird view. It's not the side view. It's not the top view. It's not any of those things anymore. So basically, we go to where it says User. You right-click on that, or you can click on any of these panels, but right up here, and you say Views, and you would say this is going to be, I think it was Front. Okay, the problem with that is it zooms way out. So you use Zoom Extents way down here in the corner. It's this little guy, and you click on that one, and boom, everything's sort of back. You may have to zoom out using the magnifying glass a little bit, but we're basically back. We've only cut out the 4 of them here, so what we'll do is we'll go over, we'll right-click on it, convert to editable mesh. We'll grab the vertex tool. That's the one with the dots. Yeah, I know I'm going pretty quick this time. And I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go make this bigger so you guys can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box, and I only want to get the interior part of the frame. These are the only ones I want to weld together. And let's put this at an angle. Now that we've got them, we can see what we're doing here a little bit better. And there they are. And I'm going to go down, and I've still got verts, and if I scroll down here a ways, one of the things that you can get under here is called weld. Time to put out your goggles. First off, I must have set it to 233 meters at some point. These are pretty close together, so let's go, I don't know, it doesn't make much of a difference. Let's go with 1 and see if that's close enough. I think I forgot to make these things a reasonable size, so let's see if that works. There we go. That works fine. Now, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 verts, we now have 4 verts, and sort of a nice little wiry kind of surface. I don't know if you can see this or not, but basically it's got sort of a surface now. This is going to be really cool. So here's how we do this. Now we've got this thing ready to go. It actually looks really cool. What we might also do now is give the frame more of a slant. So if I go to like the front view and I grab my little 4 arrow tool, I can drag this down. You can see how that makes more of a slant into the picture frame. So if you're trying to do a cheap picture frame, you could do that. In this case, more of a sign, so I don't want it to be too slanty. Okay, and there I've got sort of my signs ready to go. I'm ready to texture this thing. So let's right-click on it, convert to editable mesh, and we'll go to UVW map. You remember where that one is, right, guys? Right over here under the little triangle and UVW map. I don't want to confuse you on that. All right, now I've got that. Now I've got one other texture for my board. I'm going to go ahead and just drag. Actually, you know what? I think the back of it I'll make different. So let's go ahead and actually use the one that we already have used. So I go up to the material editor, and I forgot to name this. So once again, you do want to put your name. I think usually on the first texture is a good idea. So 1, and I'll put my name. And I'll and it doesn't need to be two-sided. No. There's a little button up here, and I've already got. It's called Apply, and that one will allow you to apply this texture that you already have to this surface. Let's see how this looks. Looks pretty awful, but we could say apply it to face. Ugh. Yeah, that doesn't look so good either. What if we said box? Still not what I'm wanting here. Alright, so we're going to have to do some messing around with this to get this to work. Darn, I figured this would be great. But on the back, I'm going to do something different anyway. So let's go to the back right now, the back of the object. Right click on it, convert to editable mesh. I got to scroll up. I'm going to get the face. I'm going to go ahead and click on the back, which will show up here as a red line. So now I've selected the back. and I'll go ahead and drag another texture on there. In this case, I'm going to put the back of the sign is going to be this color. There we go. Now I've got a sign. Um, let's see. This sign, this texture needs to be named, so make sure you give it a name like sign back. It's important you give them names so that basically when it comes time to load them in the previewer, you'll be able to actually figure out which texture was what without having to like spend 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes doing that. Converting it to editable mesh one more time here. Clicking on the face that I'd selected, which is the bottom one, and let's go UVW map one more time, and we'll make it 2 by 2. That'll put on some more of the boardy like texture. That's pretty good. Alright, that's not too bad, I guess, but I still need to fix this thing. Let's do the center picture first. Once again, you can right click on these things, go and say, here's top, here's our views, we're doing pretty good here. And now the one I need is the center, so it's the one that's on top. So now I've selected that. It's kind of hard to see that in here, you really can't tell. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the picture that I made and drag it over here. Now I have basically an image of my sign, which isn't kind of cut off, so we're going to have to fiddle with that. I'll right click and convert to editable mesh, grab the object again. This is just the insert part of the sign. It's not the whole front of the sign, but just the part that we cut out. And basically then I go UVW map one more time. It should snap it to fit into that space. And now I have my sign texture looking pretty darn good, actually. Now, the previewing image, now I think I have it set to Heidi, which makes it look real bad, but if you have it set to DirectX, then sometimes it'd crash if you try and load there. It also distorts a little bit as it tries to map this, but it'll look much better in world. The next thing is to go over here, and where it says length and width, we want to increase that by 1 each. That keeps the edge of the texture from like showing up on one side or the other. And the next thing I got to do probably is fix the edges of this. So I promised I would show you how to do that. Okay, so here we are back again. And what we need to do is basically grab some of these, the outside part of the frame. So I've converted the object to an editable mesh, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the polygon. I'm going to click one over here, and then I'm going to hold my control key down and click the other one. And then basically what that does is it grabs sort of this area. So I've got this as one polygon here, and then there's this other one down here. So that's one chunk of the frame. And now we're ready to basically go in and remap that. So we're going to go ahead and, sorry, I've got this stupid pop-up. All right, let me go ahead and go to where that particular texture is. And we're going to apply that texture. And that actually is the texture that's already on there. Okay, so we're going to go to UVW map, and that's just going to do those two parts of the sign. Which, let me pull this down so you can see that. That's not too bad. The tricky part is getting them to work the right way. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, that's not too bad. So I'm using the V tile, the vertical tile, to adjust that, and then I'm going to use, I think it's width, length. I'm going to use length up here, see where length is, to go ahead and stretch this out so the ropes don't show. And now the ropes, they are gone. And now I just repeat this process with the other side. So I go over to the other side, I get the triangle, I click once, I get the other one, I go UVW map. Each time you're doing this, it's adding some verts, if I'm not mistaken. I go to the V tile. Let's get that in there a ways. And then I'm doing, it's not width. I don't really need to do width. I need to do height. There's that. Okay, so now I've got the two sides of my frame done. Same kind of deal. I'm going to right click, convert to editable mesh. You may want to be doing this in 4 windowed modes to make sure you grab the right ones. I'm grabbing, by the way, once again, the polygon tool, which is the triangle that's filled in. And I'm going up here and I'm grabbing one, and I'm grabbing the other, and then I'm going UVW map. This should be a little bit trickier. So let me go back to here. All right, and I've got that. So I go to U. Did I go UVW map? Yeah, UVW map. All right, let me zoom in a bit more so I can't even see what I'm doing here. It's probably really tough on the video watching this. All right, and let's see. Doesn't really look like it fits very well. Oh, that's because it's. Oh, yeah, it's not going to work very good, is it? All right, so let's undo that. And let's try O, and not X. Let's try Y. Nah, it doesn't work. Let's try Z. And I'm getting lazy. I'm going to do box and try it again. So Y. No, Z, because we like you. That's there we go. So now I've got it. I probably could have done it a different way. Adding box is going to add another couple of verts to my picture, so that's not the world's best way of doing this. Let's see. So I've got this in here. I'm using V tile to go across, and then I'm going to use not length but width again. No, it's got to be height. There we go. There's height, and now I've got that part of the sign done. I can just repeat that on the bottom part. So let me, yeah. Once again, that's not the best way to do it because that is going to use up some more verts. So I got both of these. I go UVW map. I was using box, and I think it was Y, was it? No, X and fit, X and fit, V tile to move this across. So that I've got both of these things. And then, was it width? No, it was height. Height. There we go. That's pretty cool. Maybe a little bit of that. That looks pretty darn good, actually. I'd still have to do the sides of the frame. I don't know exactly what I would do. They don't look too bad that way, but they're not great either. And then basically, let's see. I right-click on the object. I convert it to an editable mesh. Let me zoom back out. And then I need to attach it. So now I've got this editable mesh. One of the options is attach. Remember that. And then I just click on the post. And I say, oh, it's going to ask me if I want to match the material IDs to material. I say, yeah, okay. Because both of these objects had the same darn material on them, applied to them. But we don't want to end up with a whole bunch of material. So you say okay to that, and it will combine these things. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Oh, yes, except for the fact that this sign would be laying on the ground. When you are working in Gmax, the top view is the top view. So this view over here is the top. we need to rotate it. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and there's a rotate tool, which is kind of handy because we need to be able to rotate something. We click on the rotate tool, and in this case I'm going to grab. Let me zoom in on this actually. Let's leave it this way. I'll just hold down. Let's see. I usually just rotate it. There's a little number down in the bottom that says when you're getting it. So let me show you where that one is. So basically X is going to be 90. Now I've got this thing worked out pretty good, except for the fact that this basic line is going to represent where the ground is. So grab the tool, got to move the sign up above, partway into the ground, like this. And probably also using the 4-arrow tool. That's what I'm using to move it. We need to go down and make it not offset. So we want it to be at the 0 location just to make life easy. There we go. Now you can sort of see that it's going underground. Now if you want to see how big the sign is, this is the next most important thing. I probably should have done this first. I'm going to go create a standard object. So once again, I'm back to the triangle. Instead of Boolean logic, now I'm back to standard primitives. I'm going to create a box. I'm just going to make the box somewhere right here in front of the sign. Here we go. So I'll make a box. We're going to go over and we're going to change the dimensions of this box before you click anywhere else. And we're going to make it 1 by 1 by 2.5, 2.4, 2.5, something like that. Okay, this green box shown right here represents the size of a person. A person would fit inside this box. 2.5 is the one that I use. I actually have an item in auctions, which is an avatar box. I forget exactly what it's called. Hopefully I can put that in the subtitles there, but basically it's a transparent box. It's actually this size. So if you're curious, you can get one in World and see how it compares to the size of avatar's body. But I usually compare that and I say, okay, well, this sign really isn't as large as I wanted it to be. So now I can grab the sign and the scale tool. You'll remember that one is the one with the little thing, and I can just stretch it out a bit more. So okay, yeah, that's about right there. I don't want it to be too tall or too high up, because if it's too tall and too high up, you'd have to tilt your avatar's head back a little bit to see it. But basically, that's about the size of a person, and that's the size of my sign. It's not bad. I still need to map the top and the bottom and the etc. to look better. But there we go. There is a sign that would be usable. And once again, the image in the sign can just be replaced. Same with the border signs, sides too. They could all be replaced too. If it was a there sign, I would probably distort it a little bit at this point in time. If you wanted to make it more like a 301, you could grab the thing, cause a little, actually maybe not the picture surface, but we could grab like some of these little verts. They grab this one here, and then we'll move this a little bit like this, and we'll tilt the top a little bit, and we'll move this in on the bottom so it's a little narrower at the bottom, and maybe move this one down and across a little bit so that the back end is a little crooked, and this one goes up a teeny bit. And I think now we've got sort of captured I don't know, like a 301 sort of look to it, and without too much work. And you want to get your mappings done before you start doing a lot of distorting of things. They don't quite map right once you get them that way. I mean, you can unwrap them and stuff and have fun with them, but basically there we go. And so there we have assigned this. We'll probably want to name this part LOD 0. There's not many verts in the sign. We could check that. We could click the little hammer and click on polygon counter, and wow, we're not doing too bad. We've only got 30 polygons in this model. That's pretty good for a sign. We have a lot of verts though because of that box mapping. When I did the box mapping for 2 polygons, I added a whole bunch more verts there. So still, overall, I think this is looking pretty darn cool, and I think this is a pretty useful model. And you can switch these textures out in the previewer. You could have a bright pink frame and any image you want in there. It's not like you're tied to them. You know what? I don't think I ever named the final texture. It will give it like some kind of default name like Material 6. So picture in frame. There we go. Now we got picture in frame. Okay, so there we go. And that basically, one other thing we could do with these textures, by default you can set them to glow or not, and if you click the little checkbox right here marked self illumination, that means that particular texture, in this case the image on the sign, would by default glow in the dark unless you changed it in Previewer. You can change all those the glowing settings in Previewer and see how it works in day or night time. Anyway, still you'd have to add a collision mesh, and you'd have to add in your nodes and do all those sorts, and the other 2 LODs. Although honestly, with only 30 polygons, if you're making a sign that has a 512 by 512 texture, it's probably going to be a shop anyway. It's probably going to be rather expensive to make this item. You probably don't need to have a different LOD for it. You can probably just leave it the same. It's not very polygon intensive now. Although you could probably cut off the top of the, or this polygon underneath the bottom of the sign. This one right here. This polygon, from a distance wouldn't be these two. These could go, and I suppose for LOD2 or something like that, you could also get rid of this part of the sign here. No one's going to see that from way right, looking right down on top of it. I guess maybe they're flying over, but by that time they're that close, you'd be all set. So there we go. We have our sign. Hey, welcome back from another tutorial. I'm sorry it was kind of more rapid fire than some of the other ones, but by now you should be sort of getting the hang of a lot of this stuff. Anyhow, now you should be able to create your own, model of a sign, minus the LODs and the dancing. I hate it when I do the wrong emote. Minus the LODs, the collision mesh, linking them to the master node, and yeah, those sorts of things you have to do before you can put it in Previewer and see how it looks. Anyhow, hope you join us for our next extra bit. See you soon.